welcome to the great ACT Leaders Debate in front of a live audience at the National Press Club here, of course, in Canberra, the beating heart of the nation. In the red corner tonight, in a moment, we're going to have Andrew Barr, the longest-serving Chief Minister in ACT history and the only remaining leader who sat around the virtual National Cabinet table during the height of the pandemic. In the blue corner is going to be Elizabeth Lee, the 7th consecutive Canberra Liberals opposition leader who is hoping to lead her party back to government after 23 years, yes, 23 years in the political wilderness. In a moment, I'm going to get our audience to make our leaders welcome. They are here now. If we could give them a round of applause. Now, we only have 30 minutes tonight, and to help make a quick debate a good debate, the parties have agreed to some rules. Microphones will be live throughout. Supporters in this room have promised to be on their very best behaviour, and there will be opportunities for rebuttal at various points, but not after every question. Our political reporters will also be providing analysis on the debate over the next 24 hours, so the words of both of you will be closely scrutinised. You have been warned. And because we've got just half an hour, answers will need to be kept to just 1 minute, which is going to be signalled by that bell. So brevity is key. And with that in mind, let's get into things. And our first topic tonight is the cost of living. Canberra is consistently named as one of the most expensive cities in the nation. Over the past 5 years, the ACT Council of Social Service says housing, education, childcare, food and transport have all risen by more than 20%. Chief Minister, have Labor's 23 years in government helped make this city a more expensive place to live?
James, the focus for the government is on helping Canberra households to meet cost of living challenges. It's not something that we can do alone. It does require the partnership of the Australian government, and an example of that has been on electricity rebates, where the federal government provided $300 to every Canberra household, and the ACT government provided an $800 rebate to the 44,000 lowest income households in the ACT. We can work together at both levels of government to help households with cost of living pressures.
Elizabeth Lee, you have a $65 million cost of living package, but I'm keen also to get your response to what you've just heard.
23 years of Labor and the Greens have really failed Canberrans, and the cost of living report this year released specifically talks about how all of the household items, everyday items that Canberra families are facing have gone up under this government. The Canberra Liberals have always prioritised cost of living measures, and that's why one of our first policies was to release a cost of living relief package. In addition to that, we've also released our fairer, more transparent rates policy, which will cap rate increases at 2.2%, as well as a commitment to abolishing the GP payroll tax, because we don't believe that Canberrans should have to pay more for essential government services, including accessing essential healthcare.
Ms Lee, I'm going to come back to your tax plans in just a moment. One key thing that our audience, Mr Barr, asked us about is health. And Commonwealth data shows that the ACT still has the lowest rate of bulk billing in the country, and recently Private Healthcare Australia said Canberrans were paying up to 50% more out of pocket for common procedures like knee replacements. Has your government failed to keep healthcare costs down in this city?
Well, what we're focused on, James, is encouraging GPs to bulk bill more. So we will provide a payroll tax exemption for that portion of their activity that is bulk billed. We're also, again, working with our federal colleagues to ensure that there are greater incentives to bulk bill. And clearly, the federal Liberal government's approach to freezing Medicare rebates for a decade is a major factor in why bulk billing rates are lower. But since that rebate incentive was put in place, tripled by Labor, we're seeing an increase in bulk billing in the ACT for the first time in 10 years.
Ms Lee, our viewers tell us that when they're door knocked by your team wants to talk a lot about capping rates at 2.2% a year for the next 4 years. You are also promising to cut payroll tax. Can you tell us what will those two tax promises cost the ACT budget?
Obviously, we're in the process of submitting all our election promises to Treasury. We submitted some today and it will proceed until the election. There's no doubt that many Canberrans have been doing it tough, with ACT Labor having gouged Canberra households year on year, on average between 6 and 9% increases in rates. And we know that we, in the ACT, many local businesses pay the highest rate of payroll tax. And this is an incentive and a barrier for local businesses to actually grow their business and hire and employ Canberrans. And we have heard this loud and clear. And there's no doubt that the measures that we have announced in relation to capping rate increases and reducing the payroll tax from the highest in the country to match New South Wales for those businesses who have a payroll bill of between $2 and $5 million will go a very long way to relieving that pressure for many Canberra households and businesses.
Mr Barr, I'm going to let you respond to that into a moment. I'm just curious, Ms Lee, why you didn't get this costed earlier, given that people started early voting today, and your signs promising that households will be $1,500 better off, as an example, in Tuggeranong, are all over town.
There's no doubt that there is a process in place to submit election promises to Treasury, and we are following that process. The process that has been outlined very clearly stipulates when Treasury wants those costings to be submitted, and we are following that process. Let's not forget, James, as well, that the payroll tax policy, which we literally announced on Saturday as part of our launch, and so we are following the process that's been outlined to get all our election commitments costed through Treasury.
Mr Barr, I'm keen for your thoughts on this. Things have got a bit fiery in recent days, perhaps for the first time in the election campaign, after you claimed that the Liberals' plans could lead to $1 billion budget black hole. Was your estimate wrong?
So across all of the tax policies that the Leader of the Opposition has released and the range of other spending measures, the Liberal Party are proposing in this campaign to collect less revenue and spend more, and somehow improve the budget bottom line. It's magic pudding economics. It's the kind of budget strategy that we've seen from the Canberra Liberals in previous election campaigns. It's a hark back to 2020 and 2016. If you want to provide good public services, public health and public education of a high quality, you must have a revenue base that will support your capacity to pay your teachers well, to pay nurses and doctors, to support strong public services. That's what Labor stands for.
James, I'm going to have to call this out.
I'm going to just let you answer that. Time is limited, though.
There is limited, but the fact is that Andrew Barr got the costings severely wrong, and it was an embarrassing blunder. And he tried to claim on ABC Radio that we apparently changed our policy within 2 days. The fact is that no one should be taking advice on economic or fiscal policy from the worst treasurer that self-government has ever seen, who has delivered 13 budgets and not a single surplus. The fact is that this is not the first time that Mr Barr has got embarrassing blunders in relation to trying to slam our costings. He made a very pathetically embarrassing error when trying to slam our cost of living relief package and tried to blame it on a typo. The fact is that our policies have been very, very well received by Canberra households, by local businesses, and he can't even get the costings as an insult right. How could he when he has failed as Treasurer for over a decade?
James,
Mr Barr, I'm going to give you a very brief response as well, but then we're going to have to move on.
There were a lot of insults in that reply. A simple
and magic pudding economics is not one?
A simple fact check. A simple fact check will disprove a lot of what the Leader of the Opposition has just said, but another simple task of submitting costings through the independent costing process could put this issue to bed. The Leader of the Opposition still hasn't submitted any
Where's your
of these
costing
policies.
submission for 800 health workers?
All right, we can take this argument back to the mean streets of Canberra tomorrow, and we'll have more on the election campaign, no doubt. On health, emergency department and surgery wait times have long been a really big issue in Canberra, and it is a big issue, as I mentioned, for the ABC's audience as well. Earlier this year, the Australian Medical Association said, and I quote, "ACT public hospitals are performing below the standard our community should expect." Andrew Barr, I suspect you're about to tell me that things are improving, but can you stand here tonight, hand on heart, and say that Canberrans right now receive the hospital treatment that they deserve in a time of crisis?
We've invested very heavily in our public health system. We've recently opened the expanded Canberra Hospital. Labor is the party that builds hospitals in this city. We've built the Centenary Hospital for Women and Children. We've built the University of Canberra Public Hospital, the Critical Services Building expansion of Canberra Hospital, and we'll build a new Northside Hospital. The Liberal Party's record on hospitals in Canberra is one of tragedy.
Elizabeth Lee, for the 5th year in a row, the ACT was named the worst 4-hour rural performer. To explain that, it essentially means that only 48% of emergency visits were completed within 4 hours. Your party has no experience in government at all for decades now. How would you fix this complex issue that Labor has struggled with?
There's no doubt that it is a complex issue. And if we're talking about experience, what experience from the Labor Party has shown us is that over 23 years, ACT Labor has taken one of the best health systems in the country to one of the worst. As the AMA has pointed out, Canberrans are not receiving the health care that they deserve. And that is why a Canberra Liberals government has committed to delivering 70,000 elective surgeries over the first term of our government. We have committed to supporting our GPs through a number of initiatives so that Canberrans can access primary care when and where they need it, so that we can relieve some of the pressure off our hospitals. We know that there is a toxic work culture that has permeated through ACT's hospitals, and that has all happened under the watch of ACT Labor.
Mr Barr, I'm going to get you to respond to some of that commentary there, but I'm also curious, a common complaint we get from viewers is that they have to travel to Sydney for specialist medical and surgical procedures. Why can't we get and keep the specialists here in the national capital?
Our population is a factor. We're a city of not quite 500,000 people, so our health system is not large enough to provide every single specialist service that we would like. That will happen over time as our population grows, but we need to be making investments now in the health infrastructure and our health workforce, which is why our priorities are to build a new Northside Hospital, to add to the hospitals we've already built, to build community health centres and our popular walk-in centres, and to recruit additional staff with a phased program of recruitment of 800 additional healthcare workers, specialists, doctors, allied health professionals, nurses across 5 territory budgets. The first tranche of that was in this year's budget, with 137 nurses recruited as part of our nurse ratio program.
Elizabeth Lee, I want to get you to respond to that as well, and whether or not you accept it. And I'm curious to know, what would you do to attract health workers to Canberra? Because this is an issue facing a lot of cities across Australia.
You know, Mr Barr has released a number of excuses and Canberrans are not buying it. You can't use the lack of population as an excuse as to why Canberrans in the nation's capital, in one of the best countries in the world, are not able to access the essential health care that Canberrans deserve. They've had 23 years to get it right, and let's not forget that this is the party that actually diverted hundreds of millions of dollars away from the hospitals, from the health system, because the money was put towards stage 1 of the tram. The fact is that there has been an underinvestment in health under ACT Labor, and with a population that was even smaller when ACT Labor inherited government, we did boast one of the best health systems in the country. The toxic work culture, and getting rid of that, is going to go a long way to ensuring that we attract, train and retain specialists that we need.
Mr Barr, one last brief comment from you on healthcare, just to respond to that.
Well, again, an independent fact check will dispel most of the accusations that have been made by the Leader of the Opposition in that set of remarks. We remain focused on the task of investing in our health system, putting public health care first, delivering public health care in our community, and Labor is the party that builds hospitals in this city. That's our track record over several decades.
Okay, we could We could probably have a whole debate on healthcare. It's one of the limitations of keeping answers to 1 minute, but we've nearly hit halfway tonight. And our next topic is leadership. Andrew Barr, you have been a minister for 18 years, pretty close to anyway, and Chief Minister for nearly 10. Have you got the sense at all during this campaign that Canberrans may now be looking for change, maybe even alternatives like independence to your government?
People look at your performance, and I've had many conversations harking back to the management of the COVID era and how we stood up every day, month after month, to support this community through one of the most challenging events in any of our lifetimes. People also talk about how we managed the bushfires in 2019-20. People vote on not only your plans for the future, but how you've conducted yourself in the role. And over that COVID period, for 2 months in a row, every single day, I stood up for this community in the National Cabinet and in communicating every single day how we would manage our way through the most challenging public health crisis this century.
Just a quick yes or no follow-up. If you win this election, will you commit to serving the full 4 years as Chief Minister?
Yes.
That's about as definitive as I think we can get, so that's good to know. Elizabeth Lee, most days that you say that Andrew Barr has been around too long, so I'm going to take your views on his leadership as understood. On your leadership, however, when you became Liberal leader, you said it was a fresh, new beginning. That's a direct quote. After the past 4 years, do you think you've succeeded in dragging your party somewhere close to Canberra's political centre?
There's no doubt that when I took on the leadership that there was a lot of talk about what the Canberra Liberals will be like under my leadership. And I think that over the last 4 years we've been able to prove to the community that we are engaged. The issues that matter to them matter to us. We're the ones who've taken the leadership role, and when it comes to discussing cost of living, when it comes to discussing the issues in our education system, when it comes to calling out the failures in health, and when it comes to standing up for small and local business. There's no doubt that the team that I lead comes from a diverse range of professions and family lives. The people that represent the Canberra Liberals represent Canberra, and despite the fact that Andrew Barr likes to talk about his experience, I think most Canberrans want to know what his plans for the future are. And so far in this election campaign, what we have seen is not a positive campaign on ideas for the future, but a mudslinging fear campaign.
We're out of time. I just wanted to ask a follow-up on that. Elizabeth Kickett was ousted from your party. Jeremy Hansen was removed as deputy. What involvement did you have in those events? Or was it just a very happy coincidence that the people causing you problems internally met with such misfortune?
I think that when Canberrans see the decisions that I have made, they know that what they will get is a leader of the Canberra Liberals that is not afraid to make the tough decisions because they're the right ones. That is in stark contrast to what we see from Andrew Barr when he's had a number of his ministers who have wasted hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars on dodgy projects and abandoned projects and has done nothing but run a protection racket. The fact is, leadership does require courage. It requires someone to stand up and make the difficult decisions, even if it may harm us. The fact is that I hope that Canberrans can see I'm the kind of leader who will stand up and make tough decisions when it is required.
You have sort of talked around my question. Mr Barr, I'm going to let you respond to that. I also wanted to ask you, some unflattering social media comments and an old education booklet from Liberal candidates found their way into the media during this campaign. Was that just a happy coincidence for your party, or did someone in Labor go looking for this?
The Leader of the Opposition has churned through 3 deputies in this term. They've lost candidates over the course of the campaign. This right-wing conservatism is endemic in the Liberal Party. It bubbles to the surface when there's a little bit of media interest. We didn't put forward a fake Facebook profile. Bert Poppins is not something of the Labor Party's creation.
That
It's
wasn't the
a
question.
Liberal candidate. And like many others, their views are extreme. And their views have become public in the scrutiny of an election campaign, as you would expect.
Does feel like I'm reminded of Muriel's wedding. Lots of coincidences. Let's get back to some policy though, because we are running out of time. I want to ask you about some of your key infrastructure promises. Chief Minister, in 2017, you caught the very slow train to Sydney and said you wanted to get the journey to under 3 hours. You said, and I quote, "This is a realistic project that can occur over the next few years." It's been 7. What year will this service take less than 3 hours?
Well, it's a project that doesn't require a partnership between the New South Wales Government, Federal Government and the ACT Government. But it's only going to happen if someone advocates for it. Now, I did get the support of the then New South Wales Deputy Premier, John Barilaro, and met with Andrew Constance, the then Transport Minister. Now I've stepped it up a level. I've got the support of the New South Wales Premier for this project. So we will work on that with them over the coming years. There will be small improvements made. We're not going to wake up one day and 4 hours will become 3, but improvements to the track, improvements to signalisation and more express services when the new New South Wales trains arrive will all make that a better journey. But it's a project worth supporting. Nearly 300,000 people use that service. Canberra and Sydney are logical cities to connect through faster rail. It's a project I support and it's a project I'll continue to champion for Canberrans.
Okay, we're out of time. I think the answer to my question is that no, we're not going to put a year on that. Elizabeth Lee, broadly, is a faster train a good idea? And do you think it'll ever happen? Because in Canberra, this promise has been made by different levels of government many, many times.
I think what's clear is that it won't happen under Andrew Barr. I mean, he can't even get his own train project on time. And
we will come to light
talking
rail
about
in a
that.
moment. But
So what makes Canberrans believe or think that he can get a fast train to Sydney underway? The fact is that Canberrans see this is a government that has made promise after promise and has broken promise after promise. Do we want to see a faster commute between Sydney and Canberra? Absolutely, and I think that it is worthwhile pursuing. But when you've been in government for this long and you've had discussions and discussions and discussions, I think that Canberrans are probably right to be quite fatigued by when do we actually see action.
We're going to have to move on to another topic. Ms Lee, elsewhere in the country, governments have balked at building new stadiums, including Queensland, which of course is hosting the Olympic Games. We're hosting the Canberra Raiders and the Brumbies. In a cost of living crisis, do you think a majority of ACT residents want to spend lots and lots of money on a stadium in the city?
There's no doubt that we need a long-term infrastructure plan, and a Canberra Liberals government will deliver on infrastructure projects that bring the most economic, social and cultural benefits to our broader community. When you have a look at some of the projects, and the comparison that you make to Parramatta, which might have the similar size stadium as well as similar size in terms of population, it does bring in broader economic benefits, about $1 million per event that has been hosted there. The fact is that Canberra is the nation's capital. We deserve, and Canberrans deserve, to be able to attend world-class events, international sporting matches. We were the only capital city in the world that did not even bid for a World Cup game. That is an international embarrassment. Canberrans deserve to be able to go see world-class events and international sporting matches right here in our capital. And of course, it brings with it the broader economic benefit that will flow on to not just local businesses, but to the entire community.
Mr Barr, I've got a pretty good memory of a city stadium being flagged about 15 years ago by a youthful, ambitious ACT politician with lots of big ideas. Are you definitely still planning to build a new one? And what do you make of Ms Lee's plans?
So yes, we are committed to a stadium at the Australian Institute of Sport precinct as part of a rejuvenation of that precinct. The Commonwealth Government have already invested $250 million in that precinct, recently reopened the AIS Arena after years of federal Liberal neglect. We are focused on our 10-year infrastructure plan, which we released in 2019, updated recently, and highlights the projects that are important for this city. Number one on that list is the new Northside Hospital, and that's why we're committed to that project. But we're also building a new theatre for Canberra, a new convention centre with an entertainment centre to support more live music, and a new pool in Commonwealth Park, all part of our big infrastructure build for Canberra. Public transport is also an essential element. So too is a big public housing program to see more affordable rentals for Canberrans.
Just specifically, I want to ask one more on the stadium. The Greens leader, Shane Rattenbury, who you've worked with in government for a long time now, was pretty clear with us a couple of weeks ago saying that this is not even a near-the-top priority for him, and he can't see it being one for some time. If you have to govern with the Greens again, will this ever happen?
Yes, we're committed to undertake a project at the AIS precinct, but it's not the number one infrastructure priority for our city. That is clear. The time frame we've talked about is commencement later this decade, completion in the early 2030s. There are other projects that are more important that we need to proceed with now, and we're focused on those.
We are really packing it in, but I want to move on to your different visions for this glorious national capital we call home. Andrew Barr, you're promising to build light rail. Ms Lee mentioned it earlier. That's going to help densify the inner south, presumably. How much is this project going to cost to build it to Woden, and where are you going to get the money to pay for it?
Well, the project is a 50-50 partnership between the ACT and federal governments, as has been already demonstrated through the Stage 2A extension. That's the project that we're focusing on between now and 2028 when it's completed, whilst at the same time undertaking the planning and other work that is necessary to secure both Commonwealth Parliamentary approval and National Capital Authority approval for the next stage of the project. Through the National Triangle, where 50,000 people work and 5 million tourists visit every year, and on to Woden. The time frame there, 2028 through to about 2033.
Elizabeth Lee, your response, there was no price tag put on that. Do you have any regrets about opposing light rail at yet another election?
The fact is that light rail stage 2B does not stack up. The fact that Mr Barr, even today, is not able to provide an answer. The fact that this week alone, what we have seen is another schmozzle of where it's been touted that it could be even split up into even more stages, just goes to show that Mr Barr has no intention of actually delivering on this project. This has been touted for over 10 years, and Canberrans are no closer to knowing the final cost, the final completion date, or the final route. In stark contrast, the Canberra Liberals have released our people-focused public transport policy that will be delivered much sooner, that will cost a fraction of the price, and that will actually deliver the public transport outcomes that Canberrans deserve. This is going to ensure that we put more focus on our electric bus system, the buses that have been neglected by the long-term Labor Greens, and to get Canberrans moving faster and costing much, much less.
Mr Barr, I'd like to give you a response to that, but I do want to move on because we do have very limited time left. Ms Lee, a big policy of yours is to house a rapidly growing Canberra outside the current city limits, about 16 kilometres to the east, with a massive new town centre at Cowan. Would you need to win multiple elections back to back to back, probably to back, to ever make this a reality?
Probably about the same number of elections Mr Barr needs to win to actually deliver a light rail to Woden. But what we have announced is that we have an ambitious plan, a bold and ambitious plan for housing, because housing affordability and lack of genuine choice when it comes to housing options has been an incredibly big issue for many, many Canberrans. We have announced not only a new district and town centre which will house 100,000 new dwellings by 2050 in Cowan, which will become the new district and town centre, but we've also announced some of the measures that we will take in the short term to get more housing on the market, including some sensible density with zoning changes, as well as fast-tracking developments in current areas, in terms of Simonston, as well as CSI Road, Ginninderra, as well as a thoroughbred park, in addition to Jacker, McNamara, Kenny and the like.
Mr Barr, I'm going to get you to respond to that. Do you think Cowan is a good idea? And just broadly, how much density do you think Canberrans want in this city?
Cowan is a terrible idea. It won't deliver any affordable housing. It is so remote from everywhere else in the ACT. It is an absurd idea for additional housing development. What we need to continue to do is focus on the areas that are already under development, make the necessary further planning changes to encourage more urban infill, and locate our housing close to where people work, where there is existing transport and where there are existing entertainment precincts. That's how you deliver good urban outcomes and more affordable outcomes for Canberrans, also protecting the environment and ensuring that we have a chance of achieving net zero emissions by 2045. The Liberals' plan is to bulldoze forests and condemn us.
It's a commercial pine plantation.
And condemn us to endless commutes and more dormitory suburbs with no employment and no services.
Mr Barr, your time has expired and I would love to give you a response, but we are nearly out of time, Ms Lee. I would like, before we go, to offer you both the chance to sum up your final pitch to voters. Elizabeth Lee, as the opposition leader and the challenger, you can go first. What's your vision for Canberrans for the next 4 years?
Thank you, James. And a Canberra Liberals government that I lead will always put you at the centre. The issues that matter to you matter to me. Cost of living, housing, health, education, community safety and the maintenance of our suburbs. They're all important. I have listened, I have heard. And I have a bold and ambitious plan for the future of Canberra. The city that we want to be befitting of the nation's capital. The city where young Canberrans can still aspire to home ownership. A city where Canberrans feel inspired to start and grow a business. A city where we host world-class events and world leaders. A city where anyone can make their dream come true, no matter what it is. I make this commitment to you. I will always respect you and your hard-earned taxpayer dollars. I will put you at the centre of government. On the 19th of October, don't miss your chance to vote for a fresh opportunity for Canberra.
And your time has expired, Ms Lee. Andrew Barr, in 1 minute or less, can we get your final thoughts tonight, please?
Thank you, James. Canberrans are proud of their city. They're proud to call this place home, and Labor wants to make the Canberra that we love even better. We'll do so by investing in our city's public health system, building new hospitals and community health facilities, employing the health workers our growing population needs. We'll continue to invest in our public education system, local schools in growth areas, new TAFE facilities. We'll continue to invest in public transport, electrifying our bus fleet, extending the light rail, and we'll invest in the infrastructure that our growing city needs. A new theatre, new swimming pool and a range of other important infrastructure investments in every suburb of Canberra, right across our city's regions, to ensure that no matter where you live in Canberra, you'll receive great public services from a local government that cares for you.
Well, we are sadly now out of time, and I want to say a big thank you to both of you for giving up your time tonight, and thank you to the National Press Club as well for this short yet pretty sharp leaders' debate. Can we please give them another round of applause? Now, I think we can all agree that the loser of tonight's debate is Sarah Ferguson, because we stole her time slot here in Canberra. But never fear, if you are watching at home, you will be able to catch up with 7:30 on iView shortly. While you're on iView, you'll also be able to find the interviews we've done with the major candidates at this ACT election. And a reminder also that on election night, the ABC will have special coverage from 6 p.m. at the National Museum on the 19th of October as the votes come in, featuring politicians, pundits, and of course the one and only Antonia Green. Thank you again for your company tonight, and from all of us in the ABC Canberra team, good night.